Hey book nerds, welcome to my channel. Today I'm filming my February wrap-up. So in February I read 14 books, which isn't as much as January, but it's still, I'm very happy with that number. And it was a bit of a strange mix of a month because I read some really good ones and I read some really bad ones. So in total I had 1 2-star read, 2 3-star reads, 1 3.5-star read, 4 4-star reads, and 2 4.5-star reads. If you're good at maths, you might notice that doesn't add up to 14. Reasons for this are 3 of those books I'm not giving a rating to for the same reason I didn't last month, and those are the Princess Diaries books, which again I'll talk about in a second. And the other one was a non-fiction book, which I'm not really sure how to rate that one, so I just didn't. Anyway, so first books I read were the rest of the Princess Diaries series, so that is books 8, 9 and 10 that I read this month. I talked about them in my last wrap up, so I won't go on and on about them, but I read these because I was very stressed. They're lovely, light, young adult books. It's an enjoyable series. I wouldn't recommend reading it if you didn't read it as a child, but if you did, it's quite nice to revisit them. A lot of the characters are a lot more idiotic than I thought. Like, I knew Mia was an idiot, but most of them are fairly horrible people. And it does make some questionable decisions, so there's certain things as well that I don't know if the author planned out the whole series. I feel like it kept getting renewed, and you can kind of tell that when you read them, so I'm going to stop talking about the Princess Diaries now and get on to the other books. So the next book I read was The Stranger Inside by Laura Benedict. This was an arc I got given and sadly I did not enjoy it, and this is my 2-star read of the month. I will link my full review down below, but essentially this is a thriller about a woman who comes back from a stay at a retreat and someone is living in her house. She calls the police, but the police don't kick that person out, and she's then got to wait while the police try and work out who's actually meant to be living in this house. My main problem with this is that it's entirely runs on idiot plots. So very early on, the main character finds out a piece of information that could get the person out of her house. She doesn't tell that to the police, she keeps it to herself so she can keep investigating this person. And from that moment on, it just became impossible for me to sympathise with her because she could end the situation at any time and was just choosing not to, so the entire plot was indeed her fault. The other thing is that there's a big reveal at the end, and the big reveal is already mentioned earlier on. I guess it was meant to be subtle foreshadowing, but it turns out to just give it away. So it's the equivalent of if a character is like, oh, this mysterious stranger reminds me of this person, and then at the end they're like, wait, this mysterious person, stranger is this person. So you've already been told, like in a thriller, that kind of thing sends out big red flags if you read that someone whose mysterious figure reminds you of someone else, then you know it's going to be that person. So yeah, it just didn't work. The main character is also extremely unlikable, which didn't bother me but might bother a lot of people, so unfortunately I cannot recommend this thriller. The next book was The Heartbreaker by Mark Young. This is a collection of 13 short stories that are mostly horror. There's 1 or 2 that I'd class more as sci-fi in this. This I gave 3.5 stars. Again, I'll link my full review down below because I'm not going to go over all of the stories now. It's a fairly new book. I think mine is actually the only review on Goodreads, and the author replied it to me, which was really cool, and I really appreciated that. There's some really good horror stuff going on in here. One of my favourite stories is No One Is Forgiven, I think it was called, and that is about a man who, when he was a child or a teenager, someone he bullied ended up committing suicide, and he's always felt guilty about that, and now he's got a son of his own and he wants to kind of confess what he did, so he confesses it to his father, and then creepy stuff happens, and it's really good. That short story alone could be made into like a full book, in my opinion anyway, and it would be a really good solid book. The last story as well was great, the protege. That's very standard horror movie stuff. There's a lot of things, a lot of different kinds of horror in this. There's some body horror stuff and like bodily functions, which I can't read about that kind of thing, so it did make me feel a bit physically sick at parts. So just be aware of that. And there's also some sexual stuff in some of the stories. Not a lot of the stories, but in some of them there is graphic sexual content, so that's another thing to be aware of. But no, it's a really enjoyable little horror anthology, and it's on Kindle Unlimited, so if you've got that, I would recommend checking it out. The next book I love with a burning passion, and that is Odd One Out by Nic Stone. Again, I'll link my blog review down below for this, because I could ramble about this book for hours, but it is a young adult contemporary romance, I'd say, and it's about a boy named Cooper who is in love with his best friend called Jupiter, and his best friend Jupiter's a lesbian, so he knows there's no way that they could ever have a relationship, but he's desperately in love with her, and then a new girl joins their really intense friendship, and she is into both Cooper and Jupiter, and both of them are into her, and it's just, I can't really explain anything more about it, but it is fantastically written. The queer representation in this is better than I ever could have hoped for. Every time I was reading something and I was scared it was going to be problematic, it wasn't, because it was written so well. Like Cooper, a male character being in love with his lesbian best friend, could so easily be written and be absolutely awful, and it wasn't. I really liked him as a character. I really understood where he was coming from. So it's just nice after the first initial couple of chapters where I didn't know what was going on or how it was going to play out. It was really nice to just be able to relax and not stress that something awful was going to happen that was going to make the book really problematic, because I knew I was in safe hands with the author. Yeah, it's just a fantastic romance. It's got very graphic sexual content, as a heads up, but it was almost a perfect read for me, and I could not recommend it more. If you like the premise even a little bit, please read this, because it's fantastic, and yeah, I fell in love with it. The next book I read was A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. This I actually buddy read with Nicole from A Beautiful Chaos of Books, who I'll link her channel down below. I love her channel so much. She reads a lot of thrillers like I do. So this is a horror book, and it's about a family who's got they've got one teenage daughter and one 8-year-old daughter, I believe. And the teenage daughter starts exhibiting worrying symptoms, and she basically has schizophrenia, but she's also saying that she's possessed by a demon. And the father is very religious, and he gets them signed up to this TV show where they're going to perform an exorcism on her. And the kind of main themes of the book are whether or not she's got mental illness, she is possessed by a demon. There is evidence for both, so I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and it's a really intense read. The first part, again, there's a lot of the bodily function stuff. I found that really difficult to read. I had to kind of stop reading at various parts because I'm really not good at that. It's my OCD, it's a massive trigger thing for me, but that's thankfully is only really confined to the first part, and then the second and third parts are more traditional horror, so I enjoyed those ones a lot more. It's a really intense read, I've already said that, but it's like very slow building, and the dynamics and the relationships between the characters are really interesting. It's told in a couple of different ways. So there's blog posts from a horror writer who's reviewing the show years after the show's come out. The main character is the younger child, so she's 8 years old in the flashbacks, but she's an adult in the modern day, and she's talking to a reporter about it, so that's the framing device for telling the story, basically. All the characters are really complex. I really like how it deals with mental health as a topic. I was worried it was going to be problematic or not very respectful, but I think it manages to be respectful, and it doesn't use the mental illness as a plot device without exploring the real implications of that, in my view anyway. The ending, I'm not going to spoil obviously, but the ending is going to stick with me for a long, long time. It wasn't what I expected, and I think it's kind of beautiful in an awful way. And yeah, I just really loved this book. I'm definitely going to read other things by this author, and I'm happy to add another one to my list of horror books by new authors that I'm reading this year, and they're going well. The next read was another 4-star one, and that was Little Darlings by Melanie Golding. This is a thriller. It is about a woman who gives birth to twins, and then she thinks that her twins have been swapped with changeling children. This is a slow burn, but in really, really good way. Again, I'll link my blog post down below for this one because it's an arc, so I did a full review of it. This really shouldn't have worked for me because it's got a lot of stuff that I don't like in it. So it's got, it's a thriller where the potential for supernatural elements is introduced and is a major plot point. And normally I hate that, but it worked really well in this one. It's also about missing children, which I don't particularly like missing children stories, but again, the way it was done was fantastic. You really feel for the main character. I really sympathised with her. Her husband is the worst. I hated him so much. There's a lot of horror with regards to pregnancy, so do not read this if you're pregnant, or basically if you're going to get pregnant soon as well, I wouldn't recommend reading this because there's a lot of horror with regards to the actual pregnancy and like body horror and stuff like that. And I think it's really good because it's important that books focus on that, because I haven't read many that do. But yeah, obviously you probably don't want to read that kind of content when you are pregnant. And yeah, this is a really great story, really good thriller concept, and it's actually used to huge advantage. I think this is already being planned to being turned into a movie, and it's not, maybe it's just been released, but it wasn't officially out yet when I read it. And that just shows how many people love this book, because that basically never happens, especially with thrillers. The next book I read was actually one of 2 non-fiction books I read this month, but I did give this one a rating, and I rated it 4 out of 5 stars, and that is Paperbacks from Hell by Grady Hendricks. I have a massive soft spot for horror, particularly old horror. Point horror books are one of my favourite things ever, and they're like a cheesy horror book series from the 90s. Paperbacks from Hell is all about the horror paperbacks that came out in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and it touches briefly upon the 90s. This is such an enjoyable read. I'd heard of basically none of these, even as a horror fan, but I've never really looked at those decades, so if you're familiar with those decades, I'm sure you'll find it really nostalgic. If you're not familiar but really enjoy horror, I found this so interesting just to see the kind of stuff that was being written about. It doesn't have a lot of background information. It mostly just goes through the kind of themes of the horror at the time, but it doesn't discuss them in any detail. It's mostly just a list of horror books. So if you're expecting like a history of horror, that's not what this is. However, it is really enjoyable just to hear about all these books, and it made me add a lot to my TBR, which is unfortunate because some of them are out of print and they're like £100 to buy a copy, which isn't going to happen, but it was just nice hearing about them anyway, and I would definitely recommend this if you're a horror fan. So the next portion of the video is my Thrillerathon wrap up, and I really enjoyed Thrillerathon. It's been my favourite readathon that I've taken part in so far. I read 2 full books but I finished the third book like the day after Thrillerathon ended, so I'm counting it. I know that's not in the spirit of readathons, but I read like 75% of it while the readathon was going on, and if you count that book, then I completed all of the challenges, so I'm sorry, I'm counting it in my head. You can disagree with me, it's fine. The first book I read was Baby Teeth by Zoje Stage. I should actually hold it up. This I picked for the best cover challenges and also the most anticipated challenge, I believe. This has a really weird start, but once I pushed past that first couple of chapters, I fell in love with it. It is about a woman who is basically about a mother and daughter, and the daughter's very young. I can't remember how old she's meant to be, because she describes parts of it, it's like alternated, so it's narrated from both the daughter's point of view and the mother's point of view. And the daughter refers to herself as being several different ages at different points, and I don't know if that's because she doesn't attend school and so she doesn't know how old she is. I think she's meant to be around 6, but sometimes she calls herself 3 and stuff, and it's a little confusing. Again, I don't know if they were flashbacks that I missed the start of the flashback or something, but anyway, we'll say she's 6, and she doesn't go to school. She's homeschooled by her mother, and this child absolutely adores her father and hates her mother, so to the point where she's absolutely horrible. She pretends to be possessed by a witch to scare her mother. She's also mute, but she starts talking to the mother, but only when the father's not around. And it's basically, the psychological thriller aspects come from whether or not the husband will believe the mother with what's going on, whether or not the daughter can successfully break up her parents, which is what she wants to happen, and also to what degree the mother is responsible for this behaviour, because I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's evidence that it's not just an evil child, that there's something that the mother has done to cause this behaviour. And this is just, it's such an intensive read. I think I really rushed through this one. I read it in like a day, and I was hooked, and there's just so much going on. It makes you really tense throughout the entire time you're reading it, because you don't know how it's going to play out. I was relieved because it's not as simple as, oh, the husband thinks the wife is crazy and therefore it's really stressful because the kid keeps doing things and she's not believed. It's not that kind of, that is the plot, but it's not based off the husband not believing his wife, which I really appreciated, because that would have got really old really fast, but this was just handled right. So I'd really recommend this if you enjoy thrillers that are based around really intensive relationships, and it's definitely one of my favourite thrillers that I've read so far this year. The next book I read for Thrillerathon is Where the Memories Lie by Sibel Hodge. This was the book that had been on my TBR the longest, and sadly I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars. This had such potential. It is about a woman whose stepfather has dementia, and she goes to visit him one day and he says that he's killed someone, and this someone is her childhood friend who went missing. She then tries to track down her childhood friend and finds out that there's been no trace of her since around the time that she went missing, and so she gets the police involved, and basically they're trying to work out whether the father with dementia really did kill her or whether he's just confused and he doesn't know what he's saying. This is just such a mediocre thriller. It really dragged. It's not that long, it's like 350 pages, but it takes a long time before you actually get to that plot. First of all, the father confesses to killing someone else, and there's like loads of chapters are taken up with that before it actually gets to the point where he confesses to killing the person that we're told in the blurb that the book is about, so that made it drag. It's not a huge twist what ends up being the solution for this problem, or this mystery rather, not a problem. You can work it out through process of elimination. It does the annoying thing that thrillers do where the main character suspects a person and that person gets cleared, and then the next person is suspected and that person gets cleared, and there's only like 3 to 4 suspects anyway, so it's not a huge twist when you find out what actually happened. And yeah, it was just kind of disappointing. It took me like 5 days to read this because I just wasn't that invested in it. So while the idea is good, I wouldn't recommend this as a thriller. The final book that I read for Thrillerathon, and the one I'm counting anyway, is An Anonymous Girl by Greer, Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. This has been hyped up a lot, and I'm just going to add to the hype train because I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This is a thriller about a woman who takes part in a psychological experiment, and the psychiatrist behind the experiment selects her specifically for a specific task the psychiatrist has in mind for this person. And I don't want to say more than that, because any more than that and it kind of spoils the beginning, because a lot of the enjoyability of this thriller comes from not knowing what's going on. I'll say the main themes of it are, again, this really intense relationship. There's kind of a stalker aspect thrown in. There's a lot of mind games and you don't really know what's going on. And yeah, it was just really, really well written. That's my main reason for enjoying it so much. It doesn't particularly do anything groundbreaking. At one point I did think it was gonna do exactly what happened in The Wife Between Us, and I was gonna get really annoyed if that happened, but thankfully it didn't happen. So I don't think it's a spoiler to say that they didn't use the same twist twice, which is good. But yeah, I can't really say much more about this because I don't want to spoil anything. It's just an incredibly well crafted thriller. Very simplistic but done fantastically, and I don't really see how you couldn't enjoy this unless you specifically had a problem with the writing style of The Wife Between Us, in which case I'd give this one a miss. The final fiction book that I read this month was The Doll Collection, which is a short story collection edited by Ellen Datlow. She's actually done a whole bunch of these collections, which I've got a couple from Amazon. This is a horror collection all about short stories themed around dolls, but in the brief, the editor specified that you couldn't use creepy doll as a plot point in terms of like a doll coming to life and killing someone, because that's overdone. So what we get here is a really creative mix of stories that use dolls in some way in the horror genre. I really love this idea, and some of the stories were great, some of them weren't. I think I'm giving this around a 3 out of 5, but I am going to do a full blog post about it, which I will link down below once I've done that, where I'm going to go through each of the short stories the way I usually do with anthologies and kind of give my opinions on them. There's some fantastic writers in here. Shauna Maguire's in here. I loved her story. That was really cool. It wasn't actually my favourite, but there's like stuff like it's just like really creative, and I love the idea of all these authors coming together with this brief, and it's just a nice little horror collection. I'm definitely going to be checking out the others. Final book that I actually finished is The Watcher's Guide, which is the Buffy book. This basically goes through Buffy series by series. There are interviews with the cast members to break up between the series. It talks about key episodes, it talks about some things to do with the episodes. This is the one I'm not rating, but I'd probably give it around a 3 out of 5. It is a really enjoyable book, but it doesn't have a lot of content in it that I haven't already heard. A lot of it is just recapping the episodes. The reason I read this is because I just rewatched the entirety of Buffy with my partner. I mean, I say just, we started it almost 3 years ago now, but we binge watched the end of series 6 and all of series 7 in like 2 days, which was intense, but I'm so glad that we're done with it because I love Buffy. And they'd never seen it before, so it was really great to get their reactions, particularly for the finale. That's why I read this, and I've kind of been flicking through it each month as we were reading the parts, and I finished it this month obviously because we finished the series. It is enjoyable. It's a very beautiful book. It looks so nice. Is it worth the money? I don't know. I wouldn't buy it full price. TV Tropes is more interesting. You find out more about the series through TV Tropes, but it's got some nice bits in it, and it has got the full script of Restless, I think it's called, which is the season 4 dream episode, and it's got all the little bits of foreshadowing in that, so that was really neat to read. But yeah, so that is all of the books that I read in February. Again, sorry this video is super long, my wrap-ups are always going to be super long, I'm afraid. Let me know what you read in February. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you have different opinions on them. That's always fun to discuss. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, it helps me out massively. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.